Welcome everybody to this week's InPower Coffee Break. I'm Dana Theus, president of InPower Coaching, and this is our Tuesday half-hour coffee tea break to sit and chat about surviving and thriving in the workplace. We like to talk about empower women topics, empower women's survival skills in the workplace and what it takes to survive as a woman these days in the workplace. But it turns out most of the things that women need, men need too. So a lot of our conversations open up to whether you're an employee, a manager, a leader, what are the skills you need to survive in the workplace? And we're very lucky this week to be covering a topic we did with Mary Schaefer, our guest today, who Mary Brody will introduce in just a moment. Which is, how do you set up a pro-human workplace? What is a pro-human workplace? Why should we have a pro-human workplace? And this is a theme that is very important to all of us on Empower Women and Empower Coaching. If you read any of our blogs, you will see that no matter how we look at it, it's very important to us that we all be working in pro-human workplaces. But a lot of us don't feel like we are. So it's important to explore, as we will today again with Mary, what does that really look like? and what does it look like from the different levels that you may be participating all the way up to the top? So before we get going, just one admin word, which is we have an open seat today. So if you want to participate via video, you just have to be logged in to the Blab platform. And please come join us via video. We also have the chat box open, so feel free to chat and ask questions or make comments. We will read them into the stream as well. And so with that, Mary Brody, why don't you introduce Mary Schaefer?
Wonderful. So no one wants to feel dispensable or replaceable at work. And sometimes it feels like you're treated as an interchangeable part versus a human being. What would it be like to work in an organization that remembers you are human and in fact supports it? A number of organizations have created cultures that serve both the needs of human beings who happen to be employees and serve the bottom line. And there is a correlation between the two. So how do we make this happen? And this is something Mary Schaefer has dreamed of and worked for her entire career, and we're going to talk about that today. Mary has a master's degree in human resources and is certified as a professional in human resources. She lives and teaches empowerment and how to have productive manager-employee interactions. As a speaker, coach, and trainer, she focuses on making the most of what human resources can contribute to an organization through their energy and creativity, while at the same time meeting their own specific needs for meaningful work. And our discussion today will talk about what it takes to revolutionize your workplace to be pro-human. So welcome, Mary.
Thanks.
So, Mary, we spent a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I forget now, we had this very robust and really interesting conversation about a pro-human workplace. So I don't necessarily want to repeat all that, but it did occur to me after we stopped, when we ended that conversation, I thought, why does Mary care about this so much? You're obviously passionate about it. You write about it. You're very well educated in it from all perspectives. Why do you care? What was going on when you woke up and went, our workplaces aren't human, and it's important to me to make that change?
Yes. And so I like to say I started my HR career when I was 14 years old on my family farm.
Wait a minute, like ducks and geese?
Cows and melons.
Okay. All right. Keep going. I want to hear this.
And I say that because when I look back, I was giving my dad all kinds of unsolicited advice about, at least in workplace terms, about employee relations and performance management and talent development. And when I look back on, I didn't even know what HR was. Even out of college, I never heard of the word. But
just to clarify, though, you weren't talking to him about managing cows. You were talking about managing cow hands, humans.
The people who were working with us, yes.
Just checking.
Actual employees. Yeah, and boy, I truly was an HR manager. I see it now. Oh my gosh, I had so much to say.
I'm curious. Go back to 14-year-old Mary. What did you see happening? In the stables and on the farm. Like, what were the patterns that you began to become aware of? I'm curious. 14-year-old mind.
Yeah, to me, it was. I guess what comes naturally to me is knowing how human nature works and how you approach a particular human being, whether or not that's going to motivate them to do a good job. And how yelling doesn't work, and good training is important. To me, it just seemed obvious. And this is so strange, but I actually improved one of our processes on the farm. We also raised tomatoes, steak tomatoes, to improve our productivity by 100%. I won't go into all the details, but it was around steak tomatoes. And my family had been doing it this way for 40 years. And I started doing this, and I'm like, if we just do it this way, we can do it so much faster. And I think back on that, and I'm like, I was just born thinking about how work should work. I don't know.
So did your dad, what was his first reaction when you proposed that?
Oh, yeah, we're doing it.
Oh, good. So he wasn't one of those, we've done it this way forever.
No. If it was going to save time and thus money, yeah, he was. Yeah, if he could see it clearly, it was clear that you could do this twice as fast the way I proposed it. And he was all in.
So in other words, you learned from a great mentor.
In a way I did, because he actually had a very coaching approach. When I think about it, and eventually went through coaching training for myself and have been a professional coach for a long time and have taught coaching. And my dad was a basketball coach for a brief period of time and loved basketball. I'm a Hoosier from Indiana. It's not unusual. But he had a very coaching approach. He would tell you what you did well, and rather than say what you did wrong, hey, let's try it this way instead. If you did it that way, I think you might get a better result. He was very coach-like. And so part of it was in my blood around knowing what was best for human beings. And I saw that being effective.
Mary?
Yes?
I was curious. What was
echoing
again. Shoot. Okay. What was the difference, what you guys were doing before? Because I'm like process, and I love the work, the workflow thing, right? Yeah. So what was the difference of what you were doing before to what you were proposing? Like, what was the step difference? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it was just a little crazy. And so it happened the year that we had 3,000 steak tomatoes. Okay.
My God,
that's a lot of tomatoes.
It indeed is. And you put a steak between every 2 tomatoes, and you tie twine at the end of the row, and then you go loop the twine around each steak, and it's supposed to hit at a level that keeps the top leaves, that holds them up. So as the plant continues to grow, it's staying off the ground, because the more the plant's on the ground, the tomatoes are going to grow on the ground and rot. Okay. So it's mainly steak tomatoes is to help prevent rot. And so what was happening was one person would loop around the steak and the other person would put it right under the top set of leaves. And I'm like, why do we need 2 person per row to do that? I can loop, bend over, put it under the leaves, and then loop and bend over and put it under the leaves. And immediately 100% increase productivity.
Actually, it sounds like something that was invented by a person that found it hard to bend over.
It could have been. Actually, it really wasn't good for you ergonomically, because you stayed bent over if you were doing the 2-person job.
Oh, right.
If you were the one doing the leaves, you were stayed bent over for the whole row. And so
this was pre-OSHA, obviously.
I didn't even know what OSHA was, ma'am.
Well, so what's really interesting to me, I love this because not only is it fascinating, I mean, I didn't know that about growing steak tomatoes, but it strikes me that, you, like you said, you have a mind for this, and you saw that pattern earlier. You had a value, which was, let's do this better, which is, by the way, not really just an HR value. I mean, that's a business skill in any, regardless of what you're doing in the business, to be able to see how things are done and see how things could be better. And it's important to at least say, your father was open to that, was encouraging of that. I mean, as you said, he had a coaching style, but he was obviously not an autocratic leader that's like, no, this is the way we do it. Right. And I think one of the challenges, not the only challenge, but one of the challenges we have is that so many of our business cultures, feel like it's only, like leaders feel like they're only successful if they're dictatorial and auditory, they're never wrong.
Yes.
And does that style of leadership breed inhuman workplaces, or is there more to it than that?
I think it certainly can, if along with that autocratic style, there's a closed-mindedness. I think emotional intelligence is strongly related to what I'm talking about.
Meaning the more emotionally intelligent a leader, the more pro-human the workplace can be.
Yes, because it requires empathy, social skills, understanding of motivation. Those are just three of the components of emotional intelligence. That's a really big deal. And when you talk about the autocratic leader, people ask me for data, have in the past all the time. There is plenty of data out there that shows a different approach other than being autocratic or dictatorial works. The most recent with ideas is from the books Firms of Endearment by Raj Sisodia and co-authors, and then Conscious Capitalism by John Mackey, Raj Sisodia, and more. They all have great ideas, particularly Firms of Endearment. Now, I could put that in front of an autocratic leader and he'd say, yeah, great. And to me, it tends to be a resistance to wanting to change themselves. And that's what I ran into corporate America. And, one of your questions that you sent me, Dana, was about what's a mid-manager to do. Because
you read these books and it's like, oh, this is so great, but the people I work for won't let me do this. I see that in people's minds. Sometimes I feel that, it's like, oh, it's impossible here. Mm-hmm. And that just is not an attitude that's going to help any of us. Right. So how do we think about it that way, or the right way? And
so I'm very familiar with what you're talking about. And I used my last several years in corporate America as sort of a lab, like I would just try things. And there were certainly situations where the CEO unknowingly, he didn't even know my name, unknowingly would undermine, everything I just did, because he had a different attitude and gave this speech, and the employees are like, but you said, I'm sorry, I was trying to make it better. But in any case, something that I find does work, and we may have talked about this a little bit last time, is if you're a mid-manager, start where you are. And I remember a colleague of mine asking particularly, I often say if human is in your title, you need to act that way. What would human resources people need to do, even given that the culture or the management did not yet support what we're talking about? I always say start with yourself. So as a middle manager or an HR person, I challenge them with this question, and it tends to make people really uncomfortable.
Oh, good. Ask it.
Yes, I will, because I like that. How humanly do you feel you're being treated?
Oh, geez. That's a loaded question.
Because you can't possibly give what you don't have. And I'm not saying you're going to change anybody above you or who has authority over you, but can you empower yourself to have discussions with them or bring a different perspective? Always got to be, aware of the authority, how it's going to be received. I often would suggest pilots of things. Can I just try this like for a month, a couple months, a couple of weeks with 20 people, and would often get yes. I tried to go to the leader that would be most open to it. If it was something that would require somebody to sign off on. Sometimes I would try to develop and cultivate champions for projects that I was doing. I was so fortunate that I worked in a place where I had enough autonomy that this was a period of several years where my bosses said to me, as long as you get the job done we're paying you to do, go ahead with that other stuff, as long as you're getting that other stuff done.
And I want to point out two things for our viewers and listeners here that I believe is really important in what you're saying. First of all, a very important part of change management is doing things small, like a pilot, that are successful that you can build on, you can point to and say, hey, look, it worked over here. Let's try it over here. Let's expand it. I mean, that's trying to boil the ocean really doesn't work. So in what you're saying, that's critical. That's how we make change. The other thing that you're saying, I think, is so important. And I think you probably have the same experience. So many clients they say, oh, I can't do this. They won't let me do this. You say, have you asked? And they're like, no. Well, go ask. It is amazing how many stories we tell ourselves about what we can and can't do that simply aren't true because we haven't asked, or we haven't asked the right way, or we haven't asked the right person. Or we ask once, we're told no, and then we take that forever. And what you're saying is really important, that, if you want to create change, you have to be the initiator, or other people will say, gosh, I wish someone would do this. I'll hand it to that other person. And you're talking also about I'm a mid-manager. How do I move up? The other opportunity here is, the Gandhi quote, be the change, right? So if you're a mid-manager, you manage some people. So the humanity you would like to receive, you can give to the people that you're managing. And it does create some tension, creative tension, but often you can be your own pilot in that sense, but you have to do it thoughtfully and intentionally, so you can turn around to the people above and say, look, up until here I was doing this, then I started doing this. This is what happened. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes, exactly.
We have a question. I don't know. Can I ask it? Okay, so Carlton, who just joined, has a question. Calling in. So we'll have someone else has called in. So Carlton just asked, is upper management typically without specific vision and are looking to you to create one, or do you find they typically have specific vision and are looking for middle management to implement it?
So first, let's welcome Fendi. Did we say that right?
Yes.
It's Fendi.
Fendi, welcome. Let's go ahead and let Mary answer that question that came in, and then we'll invite you into the conversation.
Okay. Mary, my answer to that is it could be either way. It could go either way. And there's also a third option here is upper management thinks they have a vision, but they don't.
Or they don't have a vision that's meaningful to you.
They don't have a vision that's meaningful to you, or they're not articulating it well. Right now I'm working with someone whose boss talks a lot, but my client tells me I don't get anything from what he says. and it's one of those people who think out loud.
I think Fendi's been there.
They have to talk to think, but it's not cohesive. They're not doing good as, okay, I said all that. Let me translate that to you so you can go act. They're not always great at that. So I'd say all of the above.
Well, and the response to that is, if you're not getting it, the burden is on you to say, hey, I'm not getting it, but this is what I thought you said. Is that what you said? And then they'll go, oh, no, that's not what I meant at all. And now they understand they're not getting through.
Yes.
You should follow what you think is right.
Excuse me?
You should follow what's right. Like what you think is right. Follow your heart.
Just follow your own heart.
Just be positive and move. Life is like a staircase.
Yes. I hear you, Fendi. And what's interesting about that is I'll talk about this to groups, and there's inevitably somebody in the room that'll say, oh my God, won't my boss, think that I'm talking back to them, or won't I get fired, or whatever. So one thing, to your point, Fendi, is you've got to be committed enough.
But I have one question. Are you gonna live with your boss? Your boss is like a phase. You're gonna elevate higher or something like that.
I hear what you're saying. And when I worked in corporate America, I often felt I was at the same level at my boss, and sometimes even being bossy. Which doesn't work for every boss-employee relationship. But I also find when people push back on me, oh, my boss won't want to hear that. Oh, my boss, will think badly of me for bringing that up. There's a way to bring it up, number one. And and coach them to a point where they allow you to run a pilot or do something different. And coaching skills actually help a lot when you're talking to a boss about that. And my other point, I very rarely find there's a boss who actually will punish or penalize you for bringing something like this up. Another story people have made up in their minds, Dana.
Yeah, and we have another comment here that's kind of related to this, which is talking about that disconnect between the vision that's at upper management and middle management's interest and intent on, doing it. So whether, if you're in upper management, you have to sell down. If you're in lower management, you have to sell up. And in either case, the two have to come together. And to Fendi's point, sometimes that hierarchy, we get stuck in the hierarchy and it disserves us because then we think, well, wait a minute, that person's above me. I have to do what they say, but I really don't want to do what they say. So we become passive aggressive, right? And sometimes what were you going to say, Fendi?
Oh, sorry, continue.
And sometimes that passive aggressiveness isn't serving us well. It's certainly not serving the organization, but it's not serving us and our career well. We have to step up and risk offending our bosses, but to your point, Mary, do it in a way that actually enhances our career and lets our bosses know, hey, we're independent thinkers. And vice versa. If you're in upper management, you have to encourage that independent thinking in your middle management. And as our commenter there, Lively Debate, says, people who don't do this end up not, nothing happens because they're just not communicating and they're not respecting each other. And that's the worst of all situations. And it tends to breed inhumanity.
Well, it happened to me when I was in I forgot what they call it, work experience. And I was too scared to face my boss. I wasn't confident enough to come and ask my boss for stuff. And the teacher, before going to work experience, she asked me that don't be scared. Your boss is like your supplier. He supplies you with things. He keeps you well. Basically.
So did you get up the courage to go ask your boss, talk to your boss?
Yeah.
And what happened?
We're all human beings. No one is top and no one is bottom. We're all human beings. We should walk in the same line.
Well, and I completely agree with you. And I'm going to ask Mary for her take on this because I think, Fendi, what you discovered was that when we whether we're above or below, we're the boss or the person, when we just remember, we're all human, and at a minimum, we all deserve the same level of human respect. If we come at it from that place, you can get confidence if you're lower down on the totem pole, and if you're up high, you can get some humility. And remember that these are all people, and in the next job, maybe they're your boss. Mary, what's your experience with that?
Mm-hmm. Very, very, very similar. You're exactly right. I just got off the phone with a client who I was coaching her around talking to someone she wanted something from that was sort of an authority position. Make it easy for them to say yes. Make it easy for them to respond to your request. Maintain a safe face position for them. Allow them a way out with dignity rather than putting them in a position of saying an absolute no to you. And so to me, that is approaching people in a human way. We would all like people to approach us with, allowing me a safe face position, making it safe for me to say what I really want to say based on what you're asking of me.
Fendi, I want to give you the gold star here because I think you keyed in on the essential point here, which is that a pro-human workplace isn't about giving humans everything they want or ask for, right? Because it's easy to talk ourselves out of, well, we can't deal with employees as humans because we have a business to run. But if you bring into the business that humanity, that respect, that fundamental, I have the confidence to be a human and I have the confidence to treat you as a human, all of this kind of levels out. And then you don't always get what you want, but you can feel okay in the process. And I'm really pleased that you discovered your confidence that way.
Well, to be honest, I get what I want.
You did get what you want. Well, good. and you wouldn't have if you didn't ask, right?
Huh?
You wouldn't have gotten it if you hadn't asked.
Yes. That's why I ask for stuff.
Yep. Good. Well, it's about time for us to wrap up. So I want to propose something, Mary. And if commenters have any suggestions, I would really love to do this. But I think we should start a book club. I think you're going to be with us in the months ahead, right? And we have Firms of Endearment, Conscious Capitalism. I want to introduce How. How? It's great book about how running business is more important than what you run the business to do, right? Same theory. And there's probably some other books out there like this that look at different dimensions of what is the business case for running a pro-human workplace. And I think it'd be really cool if we just took a month to, at least scan a book.
That's a great idea.
And we can invite the authors. They may or may not participate, and we can invite people to come in who've looked at that book and have opinions, and we can have some book club conversations.
Yes. And believe it or not, Raj Sisodia just accepted my LinkedIn invitation.
Yes.
So
it's a start. Actually, yeah. I mean, if we want to just do, books about corporate culture and how to survive and thrive in them, I think we can make a long list. So why don't we do that? Let's start a book list. We'll put it out. Maybe you can publish a blog post on it. Here I am. and invite people to suggest. And maybe we can invite those authors in to come talk to us about how the workplace is really like a reality TV show theory.
Yes. I would love to hear what the situation would have to say about that.
Yes, exactly. So we have just like 2 minutes left. So any final thoughts on, how to think about a pro-human workplace? If you're one of those people sitting there going, gosh, I really want one of those, but I don't live in one.
My final word on it, Dana, is truly start with yourself, because I find so many people push down how they're treated at work and just say, oh, that's just the way it is. I can't expect any better. And I refused to do that. We didn't get to my experience in the 20s that finally got me into HR was because I refused to begin to treat people like pawns and treat people like human beings. And that meant me owning my humanity and standing up for it. And that's a great place to practice. Actually,
that's great. And you know what else? There's another topic for us, because one of the topics I've been thinking about is HR is changing. It is changing. And a lot of it is because of what you're talking about, is this need to bring more humanity in. So let's put that down as a topic too. I see Carlton joined us really quickly.
Yeah, I did, and I realized you guys are trying to get out of here, and it's the end of the lab. So I just wanted to comment just briefly. First of all, I really like the lab. Thank you very much for doing this. I think, and I just wanted to comment sort of on what I wrote on the side, because I think it's important. I think people in the corporate environment, they're very quick to criticize the environment that they're in, be that HR, be that overall, be it a particular department. But again, I think if you're going to do that, if that's your inclination, if you're not happy with the way things are, again, you need to have a specific plan written down, detailed, that you can present to somebody as an alternative. Just going in and complaining doesn't get you anywhere, and it's not going to change anything. And just saying, well, gee, I wish we had a happier workplace. Again, okay, how do I do that, right? So for the people that want to change where they are, I would encourage you to spend the time to be able to articulate it and detail it out and write it down and be able to tell employers what this is going to look like if we implement this. Or like Mary was saying about having a trial or floating a test balloon, then detail that and say, what is it going to look like? How long is it going to take? Who's going to be involved? Is this going to affect adversely their day-to-day, working on the job? How are we going to address that? I think if you come to upper management, when you have a specific plan, they're much more likely to look at it and give it credibility and give you a thumbs up on it, because they know what they're giving you a thumbs up on. If you just come and say, hi, I'd like to change the way the company works, that's probably not going to happen. So
actually, that's very true. Not only will it not happen, though, but then you position yourself. Your personal brand becomes the whiner, right? Which you really don't want to do. That doesn't serve you. And the other thing I would say, having done this myself, is that you're right, putting a plan forward is really important. But don't be disappointed if they don't just sign off on it as is, because more than likely there's things you're not aware of. And what you want from them is to begin to have this topic become real. So hopefully they say, well, this is interesting, go find a pilot, or, come back to us and address A, B, and C. You're starting a conversation. You're not just looking for a thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yeah. And I think even, excuse me, I think if even if you don't get a thumbs up, like you said on the first pass, I've been at places, I've worked for a lot of people, department heads. Nobody typically is going to, if you're a department head, nobody's going to stop you from setting a different tone in your department, as long as it's not in conflict with the rest of the company. And if you do that, then you can come back a second time and say, I've already done this in my own department. It works. Here's our increase in productivity. Here's our number of sick days that we've had to give out. Here's how, here's our turnover rate that's changed significantly. And if you can give somebody hard facts, again, you get a much better chance of making your case.
You're absolutely right. Thank you for sharing that. And if you have any of those case studies, come back to one of our future blabs with Mary, because we're going to be talking about it.
I keep trying to set a different tone, but my wife keeps telling me to go away. So it doesn't always work, plan or not.
Yeah, I happen to notice you're not sitting in a cube right now. Good for you.
No, I work from home. All right, guys. Take care, and thanks a lot. It was a great blab.
Thanks, Carlton. And thank you, Mary. We now have many topics for the future. And I would invite people who are listening in on this to go to InPowerCoaching.com, and you'll find that the recording of this blab. Leave us some comments on either on our forum or on the comments section to this blab about what books we should read, what authors maybe we should invite in for this conversation to take it deeper and to understand, how to build a pro-human workplace and how to create the business case for doing so. So thank you again, Mary. We apparently will see you next month.
Yes.
And thank you, Mary Brody, for putting this on as always. It's a pleasure, and I love your earrings. I just wanted to say, I just know that. Right? Exactly. Nice. And to all of our viewers and listeners, we will see you next week, Tuesday, 1:00 Eastern, for the InPower Coffee Break. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.